Welcome to The Seer Show. Join us as we dive into the dynamic world of health, wellness, mindset, and fitness with the unparalleled guidance of lifelong knowledge seekers, Sifu Rafael and Nikki Gangemi. Sifu and Nikki will unlock groundbreaking insights with extraordinary guests from around the globe. You'll get the latest holistic approaches to well-being with a sharp focus on the powerful connection between mind, body, and soul. Get ready to take the leap. It's time to embrace a brighter and healthier future with us at The Seer Show.
5, 4,
Nikki, how are you?
Good morning, Sifu Rafael. I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm exceptional, getting better every day.
Love
You
it.
know, one of the things that's very exciting for today, Wednesday, September 4th, is that we have an exceptional guest coming on. Why don't we go ahead and bring her along? Tiffany, come and join us on The Seer Show. How are you today?
I'm good, and I love being described as exceptional. That's exciting.
In life, you have choices. And I think that the choice to be exceptional is what we can decide the minute we wake up.
I have to keep deciding.
Listen, we have a chance every morning to decide who we're going to be. And the question is, how are you?
I'm well.
Yeah, you're exceptional. If you decide that every morning, then the rest of the day will be just as beautiful as you are, right?
I
It's a
love
good
that.
mindset to wake up with.
Right.
Absolutely. So today we're going to talk about mastering communication, confidence, and even culture. How do we master culture? That's something that if you're born into a certain ethnic family, I guess you can say, if you're Japanese, if you're Chinese, if you're Spanish, if you're German, if you're French, how do we master that? Do we cook with that in mind? Do we dress that way? How do we even master culture? That's a question for both of you.
I'll let Tiffany take it first.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really the angle I usually answer this from. In regard, I do a lot of work with culture within organizations, which a lot of times have a mix of different cultures coming in, but certainly some have predominant ones that I work with, and they have their own flair in what they do, and they need to build an environment that fits that culture, not fight against it, but bring in people that are going to work with it. And that doesn't mean everybody's identical and exactly the same, but there does need to be a level of harmony depending on the role, what people are expected to do, and then also who are they having to interact with on a regular basis.
Great answer. Nikki, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts as I was listening is that I think of a networking organization that I'm a part of where there are many chapters that I visit, and there's a different culture in each chapter. And I know in my chapter, for example, there's this culture of playfulness and fun and joking. So we'll go out for breakouts and we'll have our bonding sessions, and we'll come back and people will shout out, "Too fast, that was too fast." And there's some people that are like, "Ooh, how do the guests that are visiting us feel about that?" So I think there needs to be an open communication because, when you have a room of 30, 40, 50 people, everybody has a different personality.
Yeah, I'm part of a large networking group as well, a BNI group, and there's about 70 of us. And when I first joined, it was virtual because it was during COVID. But then when we came in person, it was a little overwhelming at first. And there were some old timers with their old jokes. But the funny thing was, over time, I started to get included in those jokes. And you forget what it's like for the new people because you become part of it. That, that the way they responded to that might be a little offensive, or they're cracking jokes on each other. But if people don't know the dynamic, that could be off-putting to them if they're not understanding it.
Yes, exactly. That's a really good point.
I love both of those because you also talked about communication, Nikki, and you talked about being put off because you don't understand the language, if you will, of that culture. And earlier when I said different nationalities, right? But everybody can, even though we do live in a very mixed world, we can all come together. And one of the things that I always say is that I live in my world and you both live in your own world, right? Like in a bubble, our own thoughts, our ideas, our concepts, but then we get to share them with everyone. It's what we consider this world of ours unique because we can amplify our uniqueness into the world. We can bring value. And when you both said you belong to a networking organization and you being able to communicate differently based on maybe I'm new. How do I deal with this? Do I even want to stay or am I afraid of this? But when you're open like you were, Tiffany, and you were the new one, and now you feel like you're part of the tribe, if you will, right? That is the culture of involvement. And I think that a lot of places when we think about culture, like I initially said, we think of, this is your nationality. But when you really think about it, culture is being able to adapt to the rules of the tribe and going with it. And sometimes those rules need to be broken or rearranged, if you will. So communication, and you brought that up, Nikki. How important is communication in networking, in a tribe, in a family? How important is that for all of us in business?
Well, I think it's an 11 on a scale from 1 to 10. I think it can make or break groups, right? It can divide people, it can bring people together. But I think there should always be an open communication where people get to feel seen, heard, and understood. Yeah. What about you, Tiffany? What do you think?
I'm with you. It's everything. And I think as groups and companies start to be able to identify more what is their culture, and not even just what it is, what do we want it to be? Is this ideal right now? Sometimes there's a toxic culture, or a culture of secretiveness, or not communicating, which they want to change. But unless you acknowledge what's currently there, you're not going to be able to implement those changes for improvement. So yes, understanding our current culture and bringing in people that are going to fit within it, but that's not always a good thing. Sometimes it's looking towards that future of where do we want to get next to make improvements.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Where do we fit?
Where do we fit in, and where do we want to go next, the people that we're bringing in? So when you said, Tiffany, before that you could find out, I know you have a way of doing this where you can find out how to get like-minded people together, and maybe that's not always the best to have the same exact type of people working together. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in my work, what I look at when I go into companies is I use a survey and I can see 7 work-related traits for each person. And some of the more obvious ones might be things like social ability. And I've got companies that rank very, very low on social ability when you look at people overall. And that might make sense for the type of business it is. But then as you bring in others, you need to be somewhat careful. Is socialness required for the role? Is this something that you would want? We need somebody here who can behave in this fashion. That might be a good thing. Or depending on who they have to work with, report to, this person might feel totally out of place and not work well with the others. So it's not just so simple like we want this or we don't. It's looking at that overall dynamic of people. Some companies have a lot of people who are lower autonomy. They're more team oriented, less likely to want to make waves. And that can be nice. These can be great people for getting along with others. But sometimes what happens in those cultures is they don't address problems because nobody likes to speak up. They don't want to make those waves. That makes them uncomfortable, which over time can yield to a room of unhappy people and things are not being discussed because there's nobody there to spark that conversation. So really understanding, wow, I've got a room of people who are conflict averse. Are there ways that I can modify my interactions so that we could bring out appropriate conflicts so we're all on the same page? But also being careful. I don't want to bring in somebody who's guns blazing. They're unlikely to get along. It's unlikely to go well. They're going to make too many waves. So, right, like what's the amount of waves you want to make? You can't go all the way to the extreme. And when we look at everybody, it's a scale. It's not just I'm social or I'm not. There's degrees of that. And that's probably the trait the most often when I sit down with companies that other people in the room won't even realize about each other. I thought you were social. Me? Social? No, I go home after work. I sit in my recliner and I don't want to look at anybody because they're modifying that, right? For a period of time. It's not like they could go to work and just not speak to anybody, but it exhausts them. So every time you ask them to go to one more happy hour, one more event, Nikki, you and I are both part of networking groups. We both fall into social patterns. You will find that in networking groups. Why? We're people who want to go out and be among other people. That fills our cup. We do that easily. But then say you have an employee and you're like, well, I'm doing so great in these networking groups. Let me send them out. If you don't have the right person, that's absolutely exhausting them. They're probably not getting anything out of it. And it's not producing the same kind of results as it will for somebody like you.
Exactly.
I love the analogy of water in the way that you said it. Because if we're sitting in still water and there's nothing going on, and you talked about the waves, right? You don't want somebody who's going to make too many waves, but you do want a certain amount of waves because there's motion.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have to go in the direction the waves are going to take you, because otherwise you're going to be struggling. So I love that analogy. And when you consider understanding who your people are, I think that is huge. That is where true communication comes in, because you just said that somebody may not want to be social. They just want to go home, chill out, and maybe drink a beer or have a cocktail or just fall asleep on the couch watching TV. Meanwhile, you imagine them to be something, but without questioning, what are they like? What's your wife's name? What's your husband's name? Do you have any pets, any kids? So understanding who you're with, I think it's a critical aspect, especially if you're on a boat. Right? Do you know how to swim? Or do I have to save you? The aspects that we can bring out in a person because we know who they are really elevate the way we communicate. And I think that communication is one of the biggest things that we have to do in any event, in a networking event, in a work environment, in a social gathering. I think communication is probably the biggest thing that we have, but we forget it's a gift. We forget it's a gift, and we forget that we have to share that gift with others. And one of the things that I always say to people, I'm sorry, but I'm not a mind reader. Would you mind telling me what you're thinking, or where did that come from? Because I didn't get the full landscape because you did not elaborate. So sometimes we need that clarity, right?
Yeah. So, and even in communication, there's different communication styles. For someone like Nikki, you are low detail. Like if you're going to send me an email, just give me the bullet points. That's all I need. Good enough. other people who are very high detailed, like all the information. They might send an email to Nikki that's 3 pages long with every last thing you might ever need to know. And that is so overwhelming. She winds up not reading it at all. So it has the reverse effect of wanting to deliver information. She goes, this is long. I'll read that email later, and doesn't get to it. So even understanding how people prefer to be communicated with, you can alter that. If I'm talking to someone who's very high detail, I'm going to put more information there. I mean, it pains me. I'm like, oh, why am I still typing? Maybe I'll let ChatGPT flesh this out a little for me, because it's just so painful, because I just want like 1 or 2 points, right? But I know that that's what they need. And then similarly with someone like me or Nick, it's like, just get to the point, and I'll read it and I'll do what you want. But if you have a lot of language there, it kind of overwhelms.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel that way. It's interesting. Yeah. If I see this long email, it's like, oh, wow, this is a lot. I'll get back to this later. And then later sometimes doesn't come. I'll respond in my mind, but it's like, oh, I didn't actually respond.
And once you finally read it, it doesn't take long. You could have,
right?
But it looks like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so you wind up avoiding it.
Exactly.
It's very interesting, because I'm a creature that I do both. I like the bullet points, but if I'm interested, then I will want more.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, a lot of times that's why I like clarity. I want to be clear. Sometimes it's yes, give me the bullet points, and sometimes it's give me the book, because I need to dive deep. And you're right. We do have to speak to people and maybe say, these are the bullet points. If you want more, let me know. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good way that you can hit both people, because the one that wants the bullet points gets the bullet points. So once they want more, we'll get more. And when you talked about, let's talk to Chat GPT and see what it's going to say. I think a lot of people are defaulting to Chat GPT, and they're not thinking for themselves. And so later on, what's going to happen to our teenage kids who just discovered Chat GPT? They're like, oh, I don't have to do my assignments anymore. I don't have to do my homework. I'm going to see what Chat GPT says. Oh, I have a test coming up. What are the possible questions? And so all these different things, even though technology is amazing, we still need to use this gift here. And let's not just rely on the technology. Tell me, what's a phone number? Don't tell me the phone number, but do you know a phone number that you call often? And do you actually dial it? Or you hit the speed dial? Because it's got a name, you click it, and it goes away, right? A lot of people, I'll even say to them, what's your cell number? They're like, I don't know. I have to go find out. So when we rely solely on technology, we're losing a little bit of us. And when you think about it, it takes away from the beauty, the brain power that we have. And I think we have to use technology, but let's not forget about this beautiful, beautiful brain that we
But look at it this way too. I don't know anybody's phone numbers. No one's. Barely my own. I do know my own because I've had it for 20 years, right? Because I just.
Yep.
I also view it like, is that useful information for me? Or can my brain focus on other things because I have something easy that I'm not spending my time learning numbers and remembering emails? And I mean, I'm not anti-technology, and even things AI, right? I'm a good writer. I have a degree in it, but there's still moments where I'm like, make this shorter for me. Condense this to 500 words. And with that, it's a bit of garbage in, garbage out. You have to know how to massage it. So you're right. If you take the first version of something ChatGPT sends you and think you're going to use it, double check it, right? You need to have those skills. But I'm also not above if we've got resources that free us up to do other things that we're better at, more gifted at, enjoy. I think it's great that we have those tools to be used appropriately.
Yes. I think of, as I'm listening, when Sifu was first speaking about this concept, I thought of driving and my, what is the word? Relying on navigation too much. So I go see a chiropractor. Maybe I go once a month, a couple times a month, and I would always use the navigation system. And it would take me a different way each time. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, this is done purposefully so that I need it and I have to use it every time. One day when I was driving to my appointment, there was some kind of a glitch. And it was taking me in a way that I knew was not the right way. However, I didn't know how to get there. I had to pull over on the side of the road and call the office and say, I'm going to be late. My navigation isn't working. And I don't know how to get there. And the woman, she's like, Nikki, are you kidding? You've been coming here for over a year. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I rely on my navigation system. So to that effect, when it becomes a dependence where you're not thinking for yourself, that's what I thought of when Sifu was talking. I think there's a harmony.
Think about like the use of a calculator. You could do math on a calculator, but if you can't spot check that the answer's wrong because you know some basic math and go, this answer doesn't make sense, then that's no good to you. So I think it's kind of along the same lines. Like you need these basic skills and these fundamentals, but I'm with you, Nikki. I use my GPS in a embarrassingly large amount.
Does it do the same thing to you? Does it take you a different way each time?
I know how to get places from my house, but the second I'm not at home and I know these two places, I cannot connect in my brain how to get there from there if it's not coming straight from my house.
Yeah.
I can tell you, the technology of GPS is incredible because I remember the days where I had to have several maps in my car. And then hopefully you had somebody next to you who knew how to even read a map. Meanwhile, you got to flip it for them. You're looking at it the wrong way. Turn the map around so that you're going. But yes, technology is an incredible tool. But what I was trying to get at is that let's not just rely on it. Like Nikki, you had to pull over. I was going to an event and I looked at the map ahead of time. And I was going there. And before I knew how to, by looking at it, I knew how to go 95 and so forth. But the GPS stopped working, like Nikki's. And I pulled over and I put it back on and it wouldn't come on. So I had to shut off my phone, the whole deal. And then I said, okay, I know how to get there. But if I take 2 minutes, chill, let it reset, or it could take me an extra 30 minutes if I make the wrong turn. So I took the 2 minutes, I got back on track, and I was able to go there. But would I have been able to get there? Yes. But with technology, it would have taken me shorter time. So the efficiency of technology has really elevated what we are able to do on a daily basis. Because imagine if you, and I think I might have had this conversation with Nikki, if you wanted to have breakfast and you had to go and get every little piece or make everything, right? You had to go make the flour, or you had to go and wait for the chicken to hatch the egg. You had to wait for the milk, all these different things. But meanwhile, we can easily go to the supermarket. This is why I'm grateful every morning for every little thing that I have. For my refrigerator that works, for my arm that moves, for the lungs that I have that I can breathe in and I can wake. I woke up this morning. I am so grateful for that. So the way we communicate internally and externally, I think is probably one of the most important tools that we actually have. And so for us to forget that and allow other things to communicate for us and not necessarily say what we want, how how much are we being authentic? Or we're just being like, oh, this is what ChatGPT says, and I'm just going to tweak a little bit, but then somebody else did the same exact search, and then all of a sudden, people are getting emails, and I get emails all the time, and I'm like, oh yeah, written by ChatGPT, delete, delete. So I'm deleting emails because I'm like, they didn't take the time to think about it and reach me as an individual. And so for me, it's always about the context, the volume, if you will. And you're right. If instead of writing something 2,000 words and I can condense it to 500, that's a beautiful thing. But now I still need to read it to make sure it's still in my sense.
It totally makes sense. I think about back in school, the teacher could tell if you wrote the paper or if somebody else wrote the paper for you. We kind of know, even if it's just subconsciously, we know how somebody speaks, their tone and their way of the wording that they choose. So I notice the same thing, Sifu. When I read an email, I can say, oh, they use ChatGPT. It like has its own flavor. It's really interesting.
I sometimes will say, make this less cheesy.
Oh, I like
it does have that like ChatGPT cheese to it. I'm like, this is way too less formal. I don't sound like this,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll do something similar. I'll say, please write this less like a cheerleader tone. Because to me, it sounds like I'm being a cheerleader. And it's like, that's not how I really talk.
See, I think your cheerleader is my cheesy.
Probably.
Like less cheesy.
Yes.
Or I'll go less salesy.
Communicate, right? Cheerleader, cheesy, professional. Take a look at this. Let me know what you think after.
In a world where words shape destinies and connections forge futures, this November 22nd to the 24th, Speaking Prowess brings you the ultimate hands-on workshop. We have a lineup of some of the most influential communication experts in the industry. These are the voices that will guide you on a journey to enhance your ability to connect, influence, and succeed. Sifu Rafael, master instructor and founder of Speaking Prowess, blends communication and leadership to help you reach your full potential. Richard Walsh brings his strategic and tactical expertise to deliver rapid, lasting results for your business. Dr. Oliver T. Reed, the international multi-best-selling author and motivational speaker, known as the Writing Coach, will help you craft your messages with precision. Jose Escobar, a nationally recognized speaker and leader, will guide you in mastering personal development and leadership skills. This is more than just an event. It's a game-changing, skill-building experience. Walk away with communication prowess that transforms your personal and professional life. Speaking Prowess, where communication becomes your superpower. Reserve your seat now.
And so that's what's happening with communication here in New York. I'd love to get as many people here as possible, but we do have limited seating. Let me ask you a question. When we've been talking about communication, and as important as it is, we've talked about culture. Let's now dive into one of the other things that we wanted to talk about, which is confidence. I think confidence really shows up in your actions, the way you do things, the way you speak, and even in the culture that you want to portray. I like to cook, so one of the things that people rave about is my Spanish cooking. Because even my kids, my son is 23, and the other day he goes, Dad, I miss your cooking. I'm like, okay. Meanwhile, he's studying to be a chef. He still misses my cooking. So it's kind of interesting. So how do we show up with confidence?
Confidence is different for different people based on who they are. So there are people who derive their confidence from their social ability. People like them. They get reinforcement from others that makes them feel good. They feel confident. Other people will get their confidence from their knowledge. I know a lot of things. I have more information. I've done my research. I'm confident because of all the things I know, all the training I've received. Others will have a confidence in being strategic, being able to figure things out. And some people literally are confident just because they're confident. They're born that way, and they are the type who just think, I can do anything. I'm sure I got this. No sweat. Don't need to worry about it. And some people are gifted in multiple ways that way, right? So when we talk about confidence, it's what builds someone's confidence. So if you're not a social person and you're trying to shove in all this social recognition, and we think about this with our kids a lot, right? I've got 4 children and I want my daughters to be confident, but they get their different ways. So trying to shove social confidence on a lower social child when she's more confident, when she does well in school and has more knowledge and brings in information is what makes her feel good. That's going to fuel her differently. So realizing where people are at and how to help them achieve that through their own natural means.
Very similar to communication. Understanding the way someone chooses to communicate, their preferences, and meeting them where they're at makes a big difference in the quality of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we build confidence? Somebody who they're not sure of themselves, they're not sure of how they do things. How do we help somebody establish that they are worthy of something, that they can build their confidence if they just do it? But what is a thing that we can help somebody to construct a confidence bridge, if you will, from where they are to where they want to be?
I like that metaphor.
Yeah. I think it's the practice, right? And the ability to be their authentic self. You can't build confidence when you're not being who you truly are. And I think especially as women, Nikki, we have that imposter syndrome and I'm just going to fake it till I make it. And maybe I'm just faking it. And women tend to suffer from that a lot more than men. But when you give somebody a chance to be who they are and excel in that, that builds confidence and you're setting them up for success. I'll give an example. I was a very lousy athlete growing up, and that would surprise people because I'm very tall and sort of looked athletic. And so they always put me on these teams and I was terrible. That was not building any confidence for me. I was getting nothing out of it other than when I reached a certain age, I was like, Mom, enough. But I did very well in the school theater department and music department. That built my confidence, was being on stage, doing what I was good at, getting that reinforcement from the audience. That built up my confidence far more than me being the worst one out there on the basketball team. And almost feeling like I look like someone who's supposed to be good at this. This is even like a lower blow to the self-esteem here.
Oh, yeah. We have that in common too, Tiffany. I was not athletic at all. I hated gym class. I was absent a lot when there were certain things we'd had to do, like running the 1.2 mile. I would find a way to have to go to the nurse's office or something. But theater and acting was what I always loved. And I did. For a good part of my life, I would get my confidence from others' feedback. And what I started to notice over time is that if I didn't get the response that I wanted, then I didn't feel confident. So my confidence would waver and it would just depend on the person or which way the wind blew. And that didn't feel good either. So going back to authenticity in my older years, what I learned or became more comfortable with is being me. And people are going to like me or they're not going to like me. And that's okay. The confidence can remain. So now I derive confidence from showing up as me.
And that's wisdom, right? Mm-hmm. Think about our kids with social media, and we're subject to it too. I use social media, but I don't use filters on my photos. I don't do certain things because that dopamine hit when people put these fake pictures up of themselves and they get 1,000 likes and then they post like a real photo of them the next day and it only gets 10 likes, that's affecting their confidence. And it's hard, especially with the younger generation. They're so immersed in their phones all the time and getting that constantly needing that feedback from others. And exactly that. Then the next post, they don't get anything. So when you're saying when you're younger, you wanted that confidence from others. And if you didn't get that positive feedback, it's the end of the world. That was still like a very like kind of minor thing compared to what a lot of younger people are going through now, where that's a daily thing hitting them in the face. And it's a challenge.
You know, Tiffany, you spoke about the women compared to the men. Is it because the men have put women down? Because I personally believe women are freaking powerful. I look at you ladies. I mean, to me, you're powerful. Maybe at one time you didn't have the confidence, but you grew into that confidence. And I think it happens for little boys. It's all based on individuals. And I would not want to separate it based on gender. I'd want to separate it based on a person, because I have little kids that I teach who are super confident, and the other ones they're like little mice. And I'm like, stop it. You're amazing. Really? I'm like, yes, you are. You can do it. No, I can't. Yes, you can. Just put on the big boy pants or the big girl pants and let's go. And a lot of times, and it's because they show up, because as parents, we want our kids to show up, and we push them into things like your parents did to you. You look like a sports person. You better get out there. And we're pushing our kids to do something, which is good too, to make them uncomfortable and then figure out what makes it good for them, right? Because sometimes we need to be pushed at the edge and even pushed into the water, if you will, to see if we can swim, right? But a lot of times it's because we don't have a fallback. We don't have someone that we can go, hey, you know what? That was really tough. And I don't know if I can do it. And the fallback is somebody saying, hey, you know what? Give it a fair shake. Give it a try. The thing that gets me is when people look at something, they're like, oh, that's too hard. Or that's going to hurt. Or I'm not good enough. And this is where we have to give value to an individual, not a gender. Because to me, like I told you, I believe women are freaking powerful. I get so excited about this because I've seen what women can do, and I've seen what men can do. And to me, when you put two powerful people, whether it's a woman or a man, the power is identical to me. I'm not talking about lifting weights or anything like that. I'm talking about this, because the real power comes from what we can think and what we can take action on, not the power of lifting or masculine and all this nonsense. I'm talking about real power, real power. So it's, to me, it's not gender based, it's individual based. And when we have a support group, I don't care if it's your parents, if it's your friend, if it's networking, we need a support team. And if we don't have one, build one. This is for everybody out there. Build your own support team. Don't hang out with people who put you down. Guess what? They're not in it for you. They're in it for them. Always associate with people who want to lift you up.
Mm-hmm.
That's my piece.
Yeah, it makes a big difference in, the people that you surround yourself with and the environment. So, and even as I've gotten older, I've changed, I've pulled back from some relationships, some friendships, because I recognized that it didn't feel good anymore to be in that energy. And I think it's important that we honor ourselves and how I feel. I don't remember who said it, but it using the term self-full rather than selfish, putting yourself first, prioritizing yourself is self-full, because that's really the only way that we can give to others. The cliche of filling up your cup or giving from the overflow, there's a lot of truth in that. We can't give what we don't have. So if your energy is feeling depleted by certain company that you keep, you're not going to be able to show up at your best. So it's being self-full to make yourself a priority, and then you can be better for other people.
I like that. I've never heard that term put that way before, but I really like that, self-full.
Mm-hmm.
And I think something else I say sometimes is you have to make room. So sometimes you have to let something go to make room for something else. We do have limitations. And so if you're hanging on to these relationships that are not serving you, you're not making room for new ones that could be.
Yes.
So Tiffany, tell us what's coming up for you. What's next on your agenda? What is the most things that you're doing that you're passionate about currently?
Well, today's first day of school for my kids. So first up on the agenda was getting them on 4 different buses this morning because they go to all different schools.
Wow.
So we're hitting back into the school year here. But for me, Team Spark Advisors, I work with companies. I help them look at their people and understand their people. And some of it is for culture, for communication, to work better together. But also selfishly for these companies, this is about ROI and maximizing people and getting them in the right position so they could kick butt. I like to say we work with who we have, but we hire better, and we know what we're looking for. We know how to bring those people in that are going to build that company up, and they get the most return, right, on their investment. So I have several conferences I'm going to coming up in the next few weeks. I'm running some workshops. So a lot of exciting things on the horizon. I like to keep busy, but if anybody wants to reach out and talk to me, if they'd like to go through my survey that I do, it takes 5 minutes. It's easy, and you'll get some valuable information about yourself. And then I'd be happy to survey your teams as well.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, I would say I had the opportunity to take the survey, and what was interesting was that it gave me information on who I am innately, like when you're born, just who you are naturally. And then it gave me who I am based on the job or career that you're in and how that forms you. So it was really eye-opening, and I gained some confidence, Tiffany, from the results. When you told me I'm a rainmaker, I'm like, I'm a rainmaker? So, well, if this graph says that I am since I'm a baby, then I must be.
You are a rainmaker. That's the whole point. I like to say there's no wrong people. Just right people, right seats. There's a right thing for everybody out there. We all have our place in the world. And when we find that and we perform well, we build that confidence, we're good at what we do, that's where the magic happens. It's not trying to jam yourself a round peg in a square hole and it's not fitting. And you know it's not fitting. You're not maybe sure why it's not fitting, but it's not fitting. You're not happy. You're not performing at your best. You're not confident. And it brings everything else around you down.
Totally.
So Nikki, tell us what's going on with you. And I know that you help people in so many different ways. By the way, before we go on, connect with Tiffany. We put it on before we put it in the comments as well. Go ahead and connect with her. Tiffany, I got to tell you, I'm so happy you're here today.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nikki, tell us what's going on with you. And I know you're doing amazing work and you're helping people in different parts of their lives. So tell us about that.
Thank you, Sifu. Well, I think it's now almost 2 weeks ago, I have another book that just came out, Catalyze, Sparking Change for a New Tomorrow. And I have a chapter in there on 3 essential tools for radical personal growth. So that's been my focus. That's been for my entire life. How do I improve myself personally and level up? And I have a workshop coming up as well in October on the CALM method, which is a 4-step framework I created for changing that self-talk on the inside so you can show up more confidently. So I'm excited for that.
Awesome. Is that workshop on your website as well, so people can go to it?
It is not on my website. It's at a library. So they are promoting it. So it's a local event, but I also do events on Zoom. So when I have one of those where it's more for everybody. That'll be on my website.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I got to tell you, ladies, powerful. Thank you for being you. I got to tell you, for me, the way we communicate, the way we engage with another human being is probably one of the most important things, because we were not meant to be alone. We were meant to be part of a tribe, because we can thrive that way. And thank you both for being part of this here show. Nikki, you're an incredible co-host. Thank you for being that. I got to tell you, I would love to have as many people join us. We have a bunch of things happening. This Friday, I have the inaugural launch of Speaking Prowess. It's my sixth show, right? It's at 12 o'clock Eastern time. We'd love for everybody to join us. It's the same bat channel that we're on now, and it's going to be at 12 o'clock Eastern. Also, we have a masterclass happening on September 13th. We'd love for you to join up and sign up for that one as well. And then, of course, we have our incredible workshop with amazing, amazing gentlemen. And we may have a couple of surprise guest coaches. I'm not going to call them coaches. I'm going to call them trainers, because we don't want to train people. We don't want to coach people, because a lot of times people get coached and yet they move on, or they learn something, they move on. We want to embed the skills into each person so they actually put it in their arsenal so they can use it at any time. It's almost like Batman's belt. We got to be able to use that tool when it's needed, right? So that's what I'm doing, and I want to thank you both for being on this show. This show is made possible by viewers who just love the fact that we're able to connect and bring amazing guests like Tiffany. Tiffany, exceptional, my friend.
Thank you. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Yes. So, Nikki,
Sifu.
another great show.
Another great show.
Thank you for introducing us to Tiffany. Ladies, have yourself an exceptional rest of the week. And don't forget, every day you choose who you're going to be. Choose to be great.
Yes, choose